Hey team, Philosopher Gamer here, again with another episode of Braid and Death in Video Games. So, last time, you remember, I was talking about how the consequences of death and how death was kind of meaningless in video games. You die, the biggest consequences, you go back an hour in some games, in older games, or you lose a few items, something like that. And I touched briefly on Lucretius. I don't know if you guys remember at all, but I touched on Lucretius, who was a Roman philosopher of the Epicurean tradition, and he basically wrote this long epic poem called De Rerum Natura, which means on the nature of things, and it's mostly about atoms and how atoms behave in our world. I'll give you a quick rundown of his theory of atoms, and that is basically everything's made up of atoms. I mean, I'm not talking about, it doesn't mean atoms in the modern sense of the term, as in quarks, gluons, electrons, neutrons, protons, all that kind of stuff. He means atoms as just atoms. They don't really have a concept of what the atoms are. Lucretius doesn't go into detail of any elements or anything like that. So we just have a series of atoms, and they make up the world, and they basically the atoms make everything happen. And he introduces certain things like the void to get rid of the problem of something called infinite regress, basically, which is, if I said to you, who made Braid, for example, you'd say the developer. I'd say, who made the developer? You'd say blah. You'd say the publisher, I don't know, or the developer's parents. I'd say who made them. You'd say their grandparents. Would go on and on and on and on. And with that, right there is infinite regress. So the point of atoms is they solve infinite regress. There is nothing beyond the atoms. There are atoms, and that's it. There's nothing more than atoms. And that's basically what Lucretius is trying to do. Of course, Lucretius is kind of wrong, because I can equally apply the question, what made the atoms, or where do the atoms come from, and infinite regress is back. But for Lucretius, the introduction of atoms gets rid of it. I mean, he's a bit of a weirdo, Lucretius. He decided to lock himself in a tower in his later life and just look at people because he hated society so much. But, I mean, that's a bit odd. I suppose that's what some people want to do, though, you know, each to his own. If that's what Lucretius wants to do, let's let him do it. So, back to Lucretius' view on death. So, Lucretius goes through in the De Rerum Natura all about atoms, and it's all a bit boring, all a bit poetical, and just a bit standard, really. And then he talks about death, and saying that death is really the only thing holding humans back. Now, he is taking the Epicurean view of the gods, and that is that the gods are present, but they're absent. So they exist, but they don't care what we're doing. Which would be, in modern theological terms, a deistic approach to God. Obviously, all modern religions have, well, almost all modern religions have a theistic approach to God, and that is that God's present and he actually cares. So anyway, God's not, in Lucretius' universe, everything's made up of atoms. God's there, but he doesn't care, or the gods are there, but he doesn't really care. So humans can pretty much do whatever they want, because they don't have a fear of upsetting the gods, they don't have a fear of breaking piety, they don't have a fear of anything, basically. They are completely free, as it were, to do whatever they want to do. And so Lucretius is saying that if humans actually did that, humans would not be afraid of death. And the reason that you would not be afraid of death is because you've lived the most pleasant life that you can live, because you've done everything that you could do. And the only thing holding you back in anything is a fear of death. So, let's apply it to video games, okay? Let's talk. I've already talked about Braid, about how there is no death in Braid. You die, you rewind time, you're not dead. So, we know there's no consequences of death in Braid, but what could be... Could there be a fear of death in Braid? I mean, there is the nuisance of having to rewind time every time you die. Could that potentially be a fear of death? But let's think of other games. Are you ever in a game afraid of dying? And would you ever not do something? I don't know really how to put this at all. Would you ever not do something in a game because you're scared that your character's going to die? I haven't played World of Warcraft. I don't know, maybe in World of Warcraft that is something that World of Warcraft players fear. If there's any World of Warcraft players out there, please let me know. And then we can discuss that in the next one. How apparently in World of Warcraft perhaps dying is a bad thing. But have you ever been afraid to die of a character? Have you ever genuinely been scared that your character is going to be afraid? And that's not just you're scared because you're going to lose your items, or you're scared because you're going to go back in a checkpoint, but you're scared because you don't want your character to die. You've, shall we say, had a certain connection with the character, and that's made you do it. And one thing actually that video games can do, that I find that no other medium can do, is an interactive thing. Like, you see often morality in video games, and how your choices affect the world, and it's your choice. It's not like you're reading a book and you see someone else's choice. You have made the decision, and it's affecting the world. In Modern Warfare 2, in the airport level, you kill lots of civilians. You have made that choice, and you are carrying out the consequences. So it's interesting how video games can involve morality in their games. I will be doing another episode on morality, but anyway, back to death. So you're so, I don't really know how to put this. You've become so entranced with a character that you don't want them to die. Let's say, I mean, theoretically, I don't know if any of you have decided that you love, I don't know, Mario, or in Braid's case, Tim, so much that you never want him to die. Well, how would that make you play the game differently? Would the character being you make you want to keep him alive, but alive for his sake? I think that's the crucial thing here. I mean, this is getting quite complex, but alive for the character's sake. You want the character to be alive for his sake. You don't want the character to stay alive so that you can keep all the items and keep leveling up and complete the game, or kill more bad guys, or whatever. You want the character to live for the character's sake. This happens a lot with characters, with NPCs in video games. Often you'll find an NPC, there's a certain, I wouldn't say emotional impact, but well, there's a slight emotional impact when an NPC dies that you didn't want to die. Like, I personally was rather upset when Ghost died in Modern Warfare 2. You know, I thought he was a pretty cool character, even though we knew absolutely nothing about him. I just thought the developers got that spot on, and I thought it was a bit sad when he died. I didn't really care when, what was his name, Roach, or whatever his name was, died, when he got shot. I just didn't care. I'm just going to take over a new character, and the same thing's going to happen. So I think it'd be interesting. It's an interesting subject of how to broach death in video games, and how, you know, it can become more purposeless. So anyway, let's get back quickly to Lucretius before I wrap this up. Lucretius very much believed that death was the final thing. There wasn't any afterlife for Lucretius. And it's, to put it in the most philosophically basic way I can, we are, according to Lucretius, we are afraid subjectively of an objective state of mind. What that basically means is that, in our opinion, we find death scary. But because we don't know what death's like, we can't possibly know if it's scary or not. And that's basically what the gist of Lucretius is. Anyway, that's pretty much a wrap for this episode of Death in Video Games. And keep thinking, keep philosophizing. I'll see you next time. Peace out.